Hello, welcome to your program, Consult Your Attorney, presented by Dyer Immigration. My name is Cesar Ramirez, an immigration attorney, and today I am here with Isaac Adams, also an immigration attorney, and we are here to discuss a very important topic, and one of the most frequently asked, which is, what is a lawful permanent resident? Or as more commonly is known, a green card. So Isaac, what is it? What is a green card?
So the green card is actually the card that you get that shows that you're a permanent resident. And it's an important distinction because permanent residency is not the same thing. Your residency actually continues to exist. It does not ever expire, although we'll talk about some cases where you can lose it a little bit later. But the card does expire, and so you have to renew that every once in a while, and it was called the green card because initially when they came up with this card, it was the color green. It no longer is green. It's just a card that shows that you are a lawful permanent resident in the United States. And what that means is that you are able to work in the United States. You don't have to have any other additional documentation. That shows that you are lawfully present here, and you're allowed to do whatever most people in the United States can do. You're also able to travel outside the United States using your native country's passport still. The limitations on being a lawful permanent resident, unlike a citizen, you're not able to vote or participate in other things like that. And so there are limitations on permanent residency, but you're able to travel, you're able to work in the United States, and you are basically being told you're welcome to be an immigrant who intends to stay the most of the time in the United States.
So how can someone become a lawful permanent resident?
Well, that's a very broad question, and there are actually a lot of different paths towards permanent residency. The most common are probably through employment-based applications or through family-based applications. So if you have a family member who's a U.S. citizen or also a lawful permanent resident, they can ask for you as a family member. Depending on the type and the relationship, that, how long you may have to wait to be able to get that green card is going to vary. But if you are a brother or a sister of a U.S. citizen, they can ask for you to get a green card in the future. U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents can petition for their spouse. They can petition for their parents. They can petition for their children. When it's children, if they're minors, if they're under the age of 21, their classification will be different than if they're adults. And so it's important that you consult with an attorney and you understand what the situation is in your particular grouping. Through work, there are also a variety of ways where you could receive a green card through work. And so you need to talk to an attorney to know, okay, what are the methods, what are the potential paths that I can go through work? In addition to those, there are special immigrant classes. If you have a U visa, you could potentially get your green card in the future. If you have special immigrant juvenile status or other forms of special immigrant status, you can receive a green card as well as through defense methods or things like asylum or cancellation of removal. Those are also potential pathways to receiving your permanent residency.
Isaac, what are some of the obstacles or impediments to obtaining or becoming a lawful permanent resident?
Anything that makes you what's called inadmissible to the United States can be a bar to receiving permanent residence. And so you need to be careful of a lot of the different barriers, the challenges that people may face, and it's important to consult with an attorney. Some of the ones that are more common that we see, unlawful presence in the United States can be a cause for you not to be able to get your permanent residency, depending on the type of the petition and depending on a lot of different factors. Consulting with your attorney is important there. It's also, when it comes to criminal activity, avoid all criminal activity because especially as immigrants, criminal activity affects you much more than it does a U.S. citizen. But especially when it comes to crimes that are related to drugs, drug-related charges, weapons-related charges, anything related to terrorism, and anything that you have that deals with dishonesty. Fraud or misrepresentations are treated very seriously in immigration law and may be a cause that you are barred from receiving permanent residency or that you have other challenges. And another important factor is if you've ever been deported or if you're in removal proceedings, it complicates and may make it so that you're ineligible for permanent residency.
So Isaac, once someone is a lawful permanent resident, can they help others, family members or friends obtain lawful permanent residence?
Yes, so U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents are eligible to make family-based petitions because lawful permanent residents are more often going to have what are called priority date-based visas. They're going to be where there's not an immediately available green card, and so there may be a wait, but you can ask for your family members, especially parents, spouse, children to be able to come to the United States.
Isaac, another question is, are there any ways to lose your lawful permanent residence once you are one?
And it's an important thing to understand with lawful permanent residency. It implies permanent residency in the United States. That means that the United States government is going to expect that you're in the United States at least half the time. There are exceptions to that rule, but it is possible for the government to decide that you have abandoned your permanent residency by living too much outside the United States. So you're free to travel, but you stand a risk of losing that permanent residency if you're outside the country for too long. There are ways to overcome that. Speak with your attorney before planning any trips lasting longer than 6 months when you're a permanent resident, because you can work with them and potentially request advance permission to re-enter the United States, explain to the government why you're going to be gone for so long. There are ways around that, but you are at risk of that. And also, always, criminal activity can cause you to be inadmissible. It can cause you to not be able to get the green card in the first place. It can also be the cause for them to say, you know what, you're no longer qualified, we're going to take away your green card. So it is possible to lose your green card.
So Isaac, what is the next step after becoming a lawful permanent resident? Is there another status that's superior to being a lawful permanent resident?
There's another status that some people may consider superior. It's after lawful permanent residency. If you so choose, you can become a U.S. citizen. Anybody who has been a lawful permanent resident for at least 5 years should be eligible to apply for citizenship. They have requirements. You have to be able to pass the civics examination. You also need to be able to speak English fluently. There are exceptions to that rule as well, so talk to your attorney if you think you may be eligible for that exception. U.S. citizenship has its advantages. You can participate in the political system, you can vote, and be fully engaged in that way, and you don't have to worry about abandoning your citizenship. That won't happen. But there are reasons not to naturalize and become a U.S. citizen if you're not interested. For instance, some countries will not allow you to have dual citizenship. The United States does, but other countries may say, oh, you're a U.S. citizen, you're no longer a citizen of whatever country it may be. So it's also important sometimes to know your own native country's laws. But after 5 years, you should be eligible to apply for citizenship. You need to be able to demonstrate that you have good moral character. And if you got your green card through your wife, through marriage, your wife or your husband, then you can be eligible to apply for citizenship more quickly after only 3 years.
Well, Isaac, thank you so much for answering some of the most frequently asked questions about lawful permanent residence. And thank you for joining us today on this segment of Consult Your Attorney presented by Dyer Immigration. We hope you will join us for future segments. Thank you.